subcommittee someplace in Annapolis, but I know when I go to bed, I am not the smartest person in bed. I know you guys filibustered, so I wouldn't. I think I only have about 8 minutes left. And I'm really overwhelmed and awed, and I'm tempted just to sit down because it's not going to get any better than any of that. But I got to recognize a bunch of people who made this happen, and a bunch of elected officials are here. And I got to say, as the only guy allowed to speak today, you may have noticed, it's really cool to see my beloved colleagues in the back of the room, like waiting around, like when are they going to invite me to speak? And I guess it was not happening. Let me start with those guys. Our magnificent, sensational Attorney General Brian Frosch. Brian is a mentor, a dear friend, and don't buy the thing about how he's perfectly neutral and objective and all things. He calls me all the time with ideas for the campaign. So let's go knock on doors, let's go meet him. So he's a great politician too. Next to him, my beloved friend, Senator Rich Madalena. If I do nothing else in my life, the fact that I introduced with Senator Madaleno the marriage equality legislation, that I got to be the floor leader for that, will have made everything in public life worthwhile. I will never forget it. And I was sick during that time, and I got to make a little speech after the floor debate was over, and we were about to vote. And I just said that I had learned something in this process, being sick and fighting for marriage equality, about the difference between misfortune and injustice. Because if you wake up one day and you've got a wife you love, and family you love, and constituents you love, and students you love, and a doctor tells you you've got stage 3 colon cancer, it's just a misfortune, because it can happen to anybody, and none of us should ever forget it happens to people every day. And I'm sure there are people in this room who have family members and friends who are fighting something like that. And to me, it's an elemental act of democratic solidarity that we have to work for everybody's health care in America, which is why we need to play. I said, if it happens to you, it's just a misfortune. But if you get a diagnosis like that and you can't get health care because the person that you love and you spend your life with and you're raising kids with is of the wrong gender, or you can't get health care because you're too poor, it's not a misfortune. It's an injustice, because we could do something about that. And with the sickness and the illness and the accident and the misfortunes of life, for government to compound misfortunes that all of us live with injustice. And so our role as progressives and Democrats is to correct and stop injustice whenever we can. And it is a great point of pride in my career. I got to stand shoulder to shoulder with Senator Rich Madaleno, our first openly gay senator in the history of Maryland.
Yes.
And win that. The guy next to him, the other guy who's been silenced today, next to him, our former great Attorney General, Doug Gansler, was the person who said under Maryland law, we must recognize the valid marriages that have been performed in other states, thereby setting the stage for our victory in Annapolis. And Doug Gansler, it is such an honor to have you by my side in this campaign. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. Very quickly, Senator Susan Lee, my beloved friend on the floor, you are not going to find a more even-tempered, a more insightful, and a more persuasive person in politics than Susan Lee. She's been absolutely ubiquitous in this campaign, and I love you, Susan Lee. I love you so much. City Councilwoman and our next mayor of Tacoma Park, Jane Stewart. Jane, I don't know who you are. A magnificent champion of reproductive freedom and rights, a great role model for girls and boys in Tacoma Park, somebody who's knocking on every single door in Tacoma Park, along with my friend Peter Kovar. I don't know if Peter's here. Is Peter out there running for City Council in Ward 1? Karen was young. And by the way, this is not a Montgomery County event. This is Montgomery County, Frederick County, Carroll County. Let's hear it for our friends who come from Frederick and Carroll County. And I'm so honored and fortunate that Delegate Karen Young is on my side. I don't know if Karen's still in the room, if she didn't start to track back. There she is, Delegate Young. Already a fantastic leader in the House of Delegates on questions of public health. And somebody who's totally unafraid to ask the tough questions and to push ahead. The former chair of the Montgomery County Democratic Central Committee, my buddy Stan Kilgore, is here. Where's Stan? If Stan had to go. The Montgomery County Board of Education, Jill Morgan Faust is here someplace. Who am I missing? Oh, I missed my friend, my dear beloved friend, the senator from Rockville in Gaithersburg, Senator Cheryl Kagan, as alive. For Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. Jennifer Hosey, a member of the Democratic Central Committee, right over here. And last but not least, I hope Karen McManus is still here for Congressman Chris Van Allen. Karen, are you still there? She went over to the other event.
Joan Kleinman just left.
So Joan and Karen just left, but they were here for Chris. Okay. Let's see. A few other names of people who signed in. Well, wait a second. The Dean of the District 20 delegation, who spoke so beautifully of me, who presides over the most diverse, effective, progressive delegation in the Maryland General Assembly, Sheila Hickson, the first chair of the ever. My friend Janelle Wilkins, where's Janelle? The Democratic Central Committee person. And let's see, and somebody is here, Michelle is here representing Congressman John Sarbanes. Give them all a round of applause, please. Well, look, I could spend the whole day correcting the record for some of the stuff that people said. Let's start with Sarah, for example. Okay? And I wasn't going to tell it, but since she told the truth about me, and I was putting myself through law school, which is why I had that other class I had to get to maybe 20 minutes early or 25 minutes before the other class was over, you know. But the whole thing was, I would look at Sarah across the hallway in this big classroom in Langdale South, and I thought she was looking at me. It turned out she was not wearing her contact lenses. But this is a true story. I was coming down the stairs in the library one day, and Sarah was walking up, and I saw her, and my heart began to beat. And then I said hi, and she said hi, and then as she passed by, she said, "What's your name?" I said, "It's Jamie." And I was too taken aback even to ask her name, and she said, "Okay, I just wanted to know because I had a dream about you last night." And ask her to deny that story, okay? Ask her to deny it. I want to thank all of my sisters-in-law, my daughters, my son, all of the cousins. You guys are the best. My mother-in-law, I've got to respond to. Arlene, who's the greatest mother-in-law in the world, but she acts like she's some kind of pushover for her son-in-law. I mean, it took me like 10 years to get invited to Thanksgiving in that house. I mean, that's amazing that she put on that act for you guys. I mean, getting her endorsement is a very big deal for me. It's like the SCIU and Washington Post endorsement together. I mean, it's not an easy endorsement to get. And so I want to brag about the fact that my mother-in-law endorsed me. All right? All right, wait, I got to thank the people who organized this. Krista Burton, give her a round of applause. Kathleen Connor's done an amazing job in this campaign. Diana Conway bought us a sound system for this. Diana, thank you so much. Barbara Sullivan, all of the women on our staff, Jolly Solomon and Dina Goodman, and so on. And our photographers, Ed Kimmel, Andrew Rexon, Amanda Joy, and of course Larry Law donated Chinese food for you guys. How awesome is that? So let's take a great job. All right, now, look, somebody's going to tell me about the time, because I really did have a lot to say, but it was more important that everybody else said their stuff. But I got to say, I wish my mom were here today. I really do. We are all mixtures of our parents, and from my father, Marcus Raskin, who's here. I inherited my love of political philosophy and law and justice and music. And from my mom, I inherited my love of literature and writing and art in very big, rowdy parties. Okay? We always quoted in my house the line from Daisy Buchanan in The Great Gatsby, and I love large parties because they're so intimate. At small parties, there's no privacy at all. All right, and I just thank everybody who said all those incredible things about me. I will write you guys a letter, I promise it. It's very moving to see my former students who have these fantastic careers as lawyers and public officials come up and surprise me with all that stuff. I want to tell you a story about Tabitha, our youngest daughter. When Tabitha was in first grade, she came home one day, she said, Daddy, in our class, they were studying diversity. We have 7 African Americans, 6 white people, 5 Hispanic Americans, 4 Asian Americans, and 2 absent Americans. Okay? And when I announced that I was going to get into politics, and I've been a law professor, I was 42 years old, I've been a law professor for a long time. I told the story and I said, I do not want to be an absent American. George W. Bush was president. The Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court of the United States, which had put him into office. Thank you, Sarah, for mentioning Bush versus Gore, so I didn't have to. I said, you know what? I could write another law review article, or I could try this another way. And I made my announcement, and I laid out everything that I wanted to do, because it's already out there. I've written books and articles and stuff, and I said everything that I wanted to do. And there was a woman in the crowd who came up to me and she said, Jamie, great speech, I loved your speech, but one thing, take out that stuff about marriage equality and gay marriage. It's never going to happen. It makes you sound like you're really extreme, like you're not in the political center. And I had to swallow hard because we didn't have many attendees when it first started back then. And I was so moved what Nicole and Rudy had to say. But I said, you know, now that you put it like that, I guess I realized it is not my ambition to be in the political center. It is my ambition to be in the moral center. Because the political center moves around. You never know where it's going. But we can try to find the moral center, and our job as Democrats, our job as progressives, is to bring the political center to us. And when I got elected to Annapolis, and I was the only newcomer, total outsider of politics, to beat an incumbent that year in Democratic primaries, one of my colleagues took me out for lunch to welcome me, and he said, you know, I followed your campaign, the whole outsider, reformer, insurgent thing. He's from Southern Maryland, very old school, and he said, and all that's well and good, but you got to understand, when you're running, it's a cesspool, but when you're in, it's a jacuzzi. Okay? And at that point, I made the pledge, I just would not get in the jacuzzi. I would stand with the movements and the groups and the people who got me elected to office and try to stand with other people. And I have pursued that public philosophy. In the last decade, I think I am blessed to have been part of the most dramatic and momentous changes in less than a decade that Maryland has ever seen in its 4 centuries. Ladies and gentlemen, we were the first state in the Union to write into statute that marriage is between a man and a woman. We became the first state in the Union to pass marriage equality without being told we had to do so by our state Supreme Court. And when the petitioned to ballot, we became the first state in the Union where the voters upheld the legislature at the polls and upheld marriage equality. And I would say, invoking my buddy Rich Catalina, that's only because, in fairness, the polls closed 1 hour earlier in Maryland than they did in Maine, because the same thing happened there. But you know, when the Supreme Court handed down the Obergefell decision, and it was all over, Mr. Obergefell came out and asked him how he felt, and he said he felt fantastic, it was amazing. But he said, I want to thank the people of Maryland. He said after the decision, I want to thank the people of Maryland, because if they had not done what they did, we would not have been able to fly to BWI, Thurgood Marshall Airport, and get married on the tarmac so we could go back to Ohio only to have the state dishonor our marriage. And then they brought the suit, and that suit ended up bringing down marriage discrimination in America. On issue after issue, we did it. We restored voting rights for the ex-felons. 88,000 people. We gave them the right to vote back. After the catastrophe in Newtown, Connecticut, we passed the strongest gun safety law in America. And I introduced a ban on military assault weapons. And our great Attorney General, Brian Crawford, led us through, I think it was a week of floor debate on that. And he experienced all kinds of death threats and threats against him, his family, his party, the whole thing. And we stood strong on gun safety. And we passed some of the toughest environmental laws in the country. I introduced the Green Maryland Act to obligate every state agency and department to pass the strongest green acquisition and purchasing rules ever seen in the history of the state before. And we passed the Green Act. And this past session, so the young people who are K-12, we can embrace them and they can go to community college and the University of Maryland too. We passed in this last session legislation I introduced with an extremely right-wing senator, so right-wing, Michael Huff. He works for ALEC, the group that is, we disagree on some things, let's put it like that. But we introduced the Second Chance Act. You know what it says? It says if you've been convicted of a nonviolent misdemeanor offense, like possession of small amounts of marijuana or disorderly conduct, if you've been clean for a 3-year period, you can petition a court to have it shielded from public view so you can get back into the job market, you can get back into the workforce, and you can get on with your life. And that's going to affect 250,000 Marylanders when it takes effect next week. So, you know, when I first ran, I ran with the support of Now and NARAL because I had written a lot about reproductive freedom and the right to privacy under the Constitution. And I argued that I would be a strong champion for the right to choose, and I think I have been a strong champion for the right to choose. When the Republicans tried to delete all Medicaid funding for abortions, I was on my feet, blowing the whistle on it and saying they were trying to make it impossible for a woman to get an abortion if she's a poor woman in Maryland, even if it's to protect her own life and her own health. This is where they're going. And in Washington, they want to shut down the government in order to shut down Planned Parenthood. It's a scandal what's going on in that party. It's a scandal. When the Supreme Court decided the Ledbetter decision back in 2008, and that was an amazing decision, which said that a woman who had spent her entire career being discriminated against and making 15% less than the guys doing the exact same job in her workforce, and she only found out about it at her retirement party because somebody said, oh, you've been a good sport all these years about making less money than the guys. That was how she found out about it. It's been going on for 30 years. So she brought an action, and they had them dead to rights that this was a rank case of pay discrimination going on for decades. And the Roberts Court came back 5-4 with the decision saying, well, she should have sued within the first 180 days when the cause of action accrued, even though she didn't learn of it for another 30 years. And so I introduced, even before Congress did anything about it, saying that's not the law in Maryland. In Maryland, you have the right to sue until you learn of the discrimination against you. And we passed a little Ledbetter Act in Maryland even before it happened in Congress. And that was the first law that President Obama signed when he got into office. And you remember Lilly Ledbetter was a huge force on the campaign trail back in 2008. And I teamed up with Delegate Sandy Rosenberg to work on that. When we learned that pregnant prisoners were being shackled across the country and in Maryland, Delegate Mary Washington and I introduced legislation to ban this barbaric practice, and we got it passed in the Maryland General Assembly overwhelmingly to ban the shackling of pregnant women. I led the floor fight in the Senate to mandate reasonable accommodations of employment for pregnant employees so they would at least have to have the same treatment as employees who were sick, who were given reasonable accommodations. And when the ACLU learned that there were different programming opportunities for boys and girls in juvenile custody in Maryland, so the boys could get academic or shop, and the girls were getting cosmetology or watching TV, I introduced legislation saying that there had to be gender parity in the program offerings to kids who are in juvenile custody in our state. And that passed. And we got that passed. So, I'm not going to bore you with all of it. They did pass more than 100 bills I introduced. Please go to our website. But I want to say this. We took on the liquor lobby. I work with Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I had an award for Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That means a lot to me. We took on the liquor industry, which had had too much control for too long in Annapolis. We were legislating under the influence for a long time. But now, because of the legislation we passed, anybody who's a repeat drunk driver in Maryland must have an ignition interlock device installed on their steering wheel. And anybody who's an extreme drunk driver, even the first time out, must have that installed on their steering wheel, because we have seen too many moms and dads come and testify about the horrors of burying their kids, and too many kids come and testify about the horrors of burying their parents. But look, I want to answer the question that Sarah asked me when I first came home, because I got a call from Chris Van Allen, and he said, Senator Mikulski's stepping down and I'm going to run for Senate. Will you support me? And I said, yes, I will support you, but not only will I support you, I will run for your seat. And Sarah asked the question, and a lot of people have asked me since, which is, why would you leave Annapolis, where you are the majority whip of the Senate, where you're getting all this stuff done and you chair committees, and leave being a law professor with the students you love and the ability to write, in order to go down to Washington, where it's an impasse, paralysis, nothing but bad vibes, back and forth. And my first answer to it was very personal and confessional. I said, I am a middle child, like you always tell me. I want to bring people together. I think I can get the Republicans and Democrats to talk. And I've gotten some good stuff done with Republicans. We had Republicans even support us on marriage equality and the death penalty repeal. But then the more people began asking about it, the more my answer changed, because the question really began to depress me and demoralize me. I wanted to turn it around a little bit. I said, you know what? The premise of your question is that we have to give up on Congress. And my friends, I will not give up on the United States Congress. I will not give up on America. We've got to go to Washington and fight. We've got to go and work to build a coalition to make progressive change possible. That's what we've got to do. I am a proven, effective, progressive advocate for the things we believe in. And I want to go to Washington and get it done. And you know what? We can't build a bubble around Maryland any more than Donald Trump can build a wall to seal off the United States of America. He wants to build a wall in Mexico. Scott Walker wants to build it in Canada. The rest of them want to build a dome with a moat around it. But we can't do that. We get the best gun safety laws in America, but guess what? We have to deal with the gun safety laws in Pennsylvania, in Delaware, in West Virginia, in Virginia, in North Carolina. We've got to go to Congress and fight the NRA, and I'm going to do it. We can have environmental laws in America. And we do have environmental laws in America. And guess what? That's just Maryland. We've got Republican control of the majority of the states in the country, which is why they have gerrymandered us into near oblivion. Yes. And we've got to fight gerrymandering too, and turn that around. And I got a plan for that. But with the environment, you guys, this summer was brutal. 300,000 acres of wildfire in Alaska, 150,000 acres on fire in California, more than 5,000 homes destroyed. The earth is parched out there. Governor Brown has imposed a 25% water reduction protocol across the state. Is our future just going to be more Hurricane Katrinas, where we get a convergence of social neglect, infrastructure neglect, with the calamities of climate change? Or are we going to turn this thing around? Yeah! I'm not taking money from big gas, big oil, and big coal in this campaign because I want to go in as a champion of the public interest and move us to a new paradigm of renewable energy in the United States of America. All right, I think we've stayed past the time we've paid for. But I just want to say something about the campaign. This campaign, to me, more than anything, is about friendship. And I once read this essay by Camus, who said the most important choice you make in politics, the most important choice is your choice of friends. And I feel so bolstered, so supported, so uplifted by the friends that I've got in this room and the friends I have on the campaign trail. Laertes says in Hamlet, "The friends thou hast, their adoption tried, fasten them to thy soul with hoops of steel." Hoops of steel. That's the way I feel about the friends I've got in this campaign. So I ask you to take a sign and put the sign up, because that's the poll I believe. People say, what do the polls say? I say, I don't know, I haven't seen any polls, but we got signs. I look at the signs. And take a bumper sticker. You will make friends on the road. People tell me they're meeting other people on the road, with the thumbs up. Sign up for our list if you're not signed up. You will never be lonely again, I guarantee you. Marshall, we taking a photo?
We've got a lot.
I know we got to take one big photo. Come on, we got to take one big photo. But I just want to say, it is my honor to have you on my side. Anytime you want to come knock on doors with me, come knock on doors with me. We're having fun out there. This is the best form of aerobic exercise there is, because you exercise your legs, you exercise your arms, you exercise your heart and your mind, and you're making new friends. So come on out and knock on doors. Let's go all in April 26th, and let's win this thing.